What's good, YouTube? Man of Steel here, and the second of 5 extra solo battles for Extra Dimensional Crisis is Tapu Koko EX. And if you're looking at how to beat this challenge specifically with no trainers, I already made a separate video on my channel exclusively focused on just doing that. So I will put it down in the description below or in a timestamp, so feel free to check that out. However, this video is focused entirely on beating Tapu Koko with the specified type, which in this case is water only. As always, on this channel, I make guides on how to defeat extra solo battles while completing the specified tasks tied to each challenge. Usually that requires a specified type and 3 diamonds or less. However, since Tapu Koko required the no trainers, it's not limited to the 3 diamonds or less. Thus, we have a lot more freedom in being able to complete it with just water. But before we begin, I would like to ask y'all to please consider subscribing, as I post all things Pokemon Pocket, from expert solo battle guides like this one to Master Ball level content. Also, if you're interested in top tier gameplay, I will be streaming Monday through Fridays a few hours on both YouTube and Twitch, starting around like 11 p.m. Eastern. Not too sure what that is in your time zone, but feel free to tune in if you're available or if you just want to chill. And with that said, let's get right into breaking down the opponent, Tapu Koko EX, which on paper is actually a pretty solid list on its own. I actually used a very similar list to get to Master Ball. I think I posted it somewhere on my, like, if you look up the community post that I've made, it was -1 Oricorio, and it had a few more tweaks on the trainer side. We weren't playing double repel. We had, you know, a very similar list, which means like we're actually going against something that's quite competitive. However, there's ways to exploit it, but what I want to focus on first is like the 3 different like compartments of this deck, which is, first of all, that it's very fast, it has great follow-up, and Oricorio. Those are the 3 points that we have to like focus on. Mainly by fast, I mean Tapu Koko and Zeraora. Tapu Koko, if they're going second and they swing with Tapu Koko, they're already starting to swing for 90 the following turn, which is a lot of damage, especially since we're water only. That means 110 damage as soon as early as their turn 2, which doesn't give us much time to set up. Same thing with Zeraora, being able to get that energy if they go first. That means like you just put down your first Pokemon and they're already swinging for 70, which could get out of hand. Again, we do have like measures on how to deal with that, but it's something that you have to keep in mind when building the deck to go against this. The second one is the powerful follow-up. The Electrical Cord is one of the most like busted cards to come out, like one of the greatest pieces of support that Electric has gotten, that Lightning has gotten in quite a while actually. Being able to like build up the main attacker, and the second it gets knocked down, you start like ramping everything behind you, is huge, which gives it such a great follow-up in the sense that Pikachu EX is something that took forever to build up, or you had to focus on building it up slowly, whether it's with the Pachirisu that came out in the same set as it. But now with Electrical Cord, you're able to attack with Tapu Koko, Zeraora, literally anything, while knowing that once it gets taken down, your Pikachu is basically ready to attack in the follow-up, swinging for 150, which tends to close out most games, if not all of them. And then the final thing is Oricorio, so we have to be careful on either how we play, because if we just focus on an EX strategy, we could just get walled up by Oricorio. For the rest of the deck, the 2 Cyruses don't really come up due to the fact that they don't have spread damage. It only comes up if you try to like bounce around. Dawn could be a surprise if you're not ready for it, or if you forget they have it. However, it's one of those things that the deck just tends to do. So like if our deck gets rolling, cards like Dawn, X, Speed, stuff like that doesn't really matter. Repel could be annoying early in the game, but later in the game, once we have setup established, Repel is also a non-issue. So what truly matters is how fast they're dealing damage. The fact that once you get rid of their first threat, they could have a second threat already to go, and that Oricorio just walls off EXs. With all that in mind, the best deck to beat it is Gyarados EX. Yes, Gyarados EX is completely fallen off from the meta, and if you were to take it into rank today, you'd probably have a bad time. However, this list is perfect for the Tapu Koko EX for multiple reasons. However, if you look at it at face value, you could see that it struggles with some of the things I mentioned. Like our main attacker is Gyarados EX that cannot do anything to Oricorio. Our main setup is Manaphy that could get turboed out of the way with cards like Tapu Koko and Zeraora. And even a built-up Palkia, if it does not flip heads, basically does nothing in its matchup. But when played correctly, this deck truly takes down Tapu Koko a lot easier than you would think. As far as the speed element, we can't really do too much to counter it directly. The best thing would be just leading up Manaphy and giving us much energy to your Magikarp / Gyarados before it gets knocked out. Even if it's just once, most of the Pokemon that you have is just meat shields while you're building up that one Gyarados, which is why we still play the Origin form Palkia. And to deal with their follow-up, the main thing is Gyarados EX's 180 HP tends to be high enough where that Pikachu follow-up play doesn't even knock us out. They're not playing Red, they're not playing Giovanni or anything like that, so we have the freedom of like just bringing out Gyarados, knocking out whatever they have in the active, and their follow-up has no way of knocking us out. More likely than not, they're going to go into Oricorio, which is the 3rd point we have to deal with, which is why we're playing 4 cards that get Oricorio out of the way. Granted, if they set up 2 Oricorios, Sabrinas and Repels don't do absolutely anything. However, that's not how the opponent tends to play, if that makes any sense. Usually they have one Oricorio and then they just build up a line of EXs, which makes it a lot easier to beat. And I know that sounds a little gimmicky, but trust me, in practice and as you'll see in the gameplay, it's just how it ends up working out. So we don't have to really have to deal with the idea of like, oh, what if they have the double Oricorio and then our repels don't do anything. And at worst case scenario, that's what Palkia's main ability is to do, is we build up the Palkia to attempt to knock out the Oricorio. But more often than not, the repels and Sabrina are enough to get the one that they usually put on the board out of the way, and Gyarados just closes out the game by knocking out the EXs in the backline. Misty is not consistent enough, but it is a way to counter the speed that Tapu Koko and Zeraora provide. Iono and Communication are completely there just for consistency, and the Guzma is to get rid of Cord. If you're able to knock out the answer the follow-up with just the Guzma, it makes it a lot easier. However, like I said, Gyarados having 180 HP is usually enough to counter the fact that Cord gives them a follow-up play. Nonetheless, the best way to show y'all is through gameplay, so feel free to stick around for that. And hopefully the list works for you as well as it did for me. And if it did, please consider subscribing once again. Regardless, thank you for watching, and above all else, stay pro. Alright, and going second, which is ideal even if they have Zeraora or whatever, regardless of what they have. If we have a Manaphy, going second lets us use Manaphy early, whether or not they knock it out in the after the fact, right? So like, yeah, that's unfortunate. Like, had they had Tapu Koko, that gives Manaphy a second turn, because Tapu Koko could only hit for 40. But we at least get one charge in, and hopefully we find a way. Technically, we could repel as well. But they do play double X speed. They do play... Okay, you see here, I don't know what's going on. I'm not going to complain because it's to our benefit, but... They do play Dawn. They do have a second X speed, so they could bring back this Aurora easily. Alright. That's unfortunate. We're going to have to Iono here, because we need something to ramp with Manaphy. So we're looking for Magikarp, we're looking for Palkia. And I think we just got both of them. It's not guaranteed, but there it is. Alright, perfect. Best case scenario for sure, outside of them having, is that even if they have an X speed and starts knockout Manaphy, we could go from there, and from there we could go into Palkia and just keep walling until we have a Magikarp / Gyarados ready to attack. All right, there's Tapu Koko. There's the Dawn. Yeah, but again, it's the AI, right? They're not going to play perfectly. All we care about is that we did get that extra turn with Magikarp. I mean, with Manaphy, which is all that matters. Now we just got to find Gyarados, which realistically we probably will get there. We'll keep the second Manaphy just for the sake of being able to communicate, use communication. Part of me wants to use Repel. So that even if they want to bring out Tapu Koko, they could only deal so much damage. But again, I'd rather keep up the ability of communication. Plus, next turn we could go into Palkia. Yeah, let's stick to the game plan, which is having Manaphy ramp as much as possible, but not going out of our way to keep it up, if that makes sense. We got one research, we got communication and double Gyarados as ways to finding the Gyarados. Okay, they want Repel here, which means they can only hit Palkia for 110. So actually, we accept. This isn't so bad. All right, this is our out to Oricorio, but as you can see, we're already in a situation where it doesn't matter. And just like that, the game's over. Because you see, they usually don't build up double Oricorio is what I'm trying to get at here. Okay, we just back out into Gyarados. And even if the Pikachu was ready to attack off of the cord, it only hits for 170. So we just knock it out in the follow-up as well. And yep. And even if they find one Oricorio, we have both Sabrina and Repel to get it out of the way and just finish out the game. And it's really that simple. As always, though, we always do multiple examples. I like to show minimum two, usually two, just to show y'all that it's doable and that it's not just like one lucky round that I posted. As you see, here's the Oricorio. But look, they didn't even back into it. But that's just what my lists are meant so that no matter like worst case scenario, if they're playing out of their minds, you can still beat them. That's the idea. Had they put the Oricorio up front to try to wall us, we easily repel and Sabrina to win. Like we were ready for it is what I'm trying to get at. We weren't just gonna like lose to them walling us. And that's all it takes to beat the Tapu Koko EX with the opposite type, in this case water. Since the rarity doesn't matter, we were able to use EX Pokemon like Gyarados. And on to the next example. Alright, going second again. But look, this time we don't have Manaphy, so you know that's the adversity we have to face here. Luckily, we have Pokeball to either give us a second Magikarp or just a way of like getting out of the situation. All right, nothing much from their side, but that's okay. All right, Iono. Let's see here. I think I want to research. We already have Gyarados, right? So let's just try to get as many basic Pokemon, because this does seem like a game where we just want to put a bunch of guys in the way. As to whether it's... Okay, yeah. I would have obviously preferred Manaphy in this situation, so that I'm able to like leap into Manaphy. The Tapu Koko would have just done 20 damage and we'd be on our way to victory, but instead we'll be using Palkia as a wall. So it'll be rather slow, but if you do the math, Palkia will survive 2 turns. Like it'll survive this turn. That lets us go to 2 energy. That doesn't change the math at all. That's a again they don't. It's an AI. They don't know how to use Dawn. Tapu Koko like would have ramped itself up. Whatever. It doesn't matter. That's not what we're here for. What does matter is again that we'll be at 2 energy. They knock out this Palkia next turn. We throw out this Magikarp as bait, and then puts us to 3. And then following turn the game's over. We have the Repel for Oricorio. We got Sabrina for Oricorio. They don't play Mars or Red Card, so our hand is safe from anything that they could try to do. And just like that, we go through the motions. One thing that they could have, that they do have the option to do, is Repel. So that's like the one thing that another either Manaphy or actually no, yeah, Manaphy is the only other Pokemon we have left in the deck. 2 copies of Manaphy. It'd be cool because if they repel here, they could hit Gyarados before we have it fully set up. However, this could also do... The safer play is definitely to Iono in search of a Manaphy to make sure that they can't just repel and hit Gyarados early. But if we Misty right here, we could just close out the game immediately. I think we gotta go for consistency though. Let's play the game as it was meant to be. And again, the only way they have to... The reason we're safe by putting it... There you go. The game's over now. The reason it's safe to put down Manaphy is because their way of opting... of exchanging the board is through Repel. So once Gyarados is active, they have no way of manipulating what we have active. So... Yeah, and just like that. They don't have any cords, but if we saw Guzma, that'd be like another answer to that, but... And yes, if we were going against like an actual player using the Tapu Koko deck, they could find a way where they just put double Oricorio and we have no way of like winning from this point because we did lose our Palkia. But again, you have to keep in mind we're playing against an AI that doesn't have everything figured out. They just play to what they know. And locking up the board with Oricorio is not one thing they know. You see, they didn't even leave a slot for Oricorio. And I'm glad it happened this way, so you're able to see what I meant by... Well, not what I meant by, but in the breakdown, I brought up how... This Pokemon has no target, but I brought up how our best answer to the follow-up is the fact that Gyarados just has a lot of HP. This is like the perfect example. as we knock out here, and oh, that didn't even take into account that Gyarados just sniped the energy from the Pikachu. So never mind. That example went off the. Yeah, never mind. I was gonna show y'all like, oh yeah, they get to build up their Pikachu. They're gonna swing for 150, but we survive with 10 HP, which is all we need to close it out. But in this case, Gyarados said, nah, we'll double down on not being able to. It's like, not only do we survive a Pikachu attack, we don't even let it happen. That's a throwback to some of my best Gyarados gameplay is sniping the energy from like a Giratina in the back. And we won't waste your time any longer with any extra buttons. We just swing, and that's the game. Honestly, pretty straightforward. There might be hands where you just open one Magikarp, don't see a way to like either put something in the back, and they'll like automatically beat you with a Tapu Koko attack or a Zeraora. That will happen, or it's possible to happen, but more likely than not, you'll have a way to build up your Magikarp while having everything else practically just take hits for you while you build that up. And once you set up Gyarados, the game's practically over. We play enough cards to get Oricorio out of the way. Granted, it did not come up in the replays, but trust me, through practice, it does come up, and that's why we're playing so many ways to just make sure we have a way to get that Oricorio out, and that usually seals the deal. Once again, hopefully this video helps you out. If it did, once again, please consider subscribing. Regardless, thank y'all for watching, especially if you got to this point of the video. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of y'all, and above all else, stay pro.